Welcome to Error Coins Hub, and I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now because somewhere in America today, someone is about to throw away $8 million, and the terrifying part is it fits in the palm of your hand. We're talking about a coin so small, so ordinary looking, so completely unremarkable to the untrained eye that millions of people have already held one and tossed it into a tip jar, dropped it into a vending machine, or let it rattle around forgotten in the bottom of a coat pocket for 30 years without ever suspecting, not even for a single second, that what they were casually discarding was worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a fleet of exotic sports cars, more than most people will earn in an entire lifetime of working. And the coin I'm talking about is the 1989 Roosevelt Dime, a 10-cent piece so loaded with numismatic power, so electrified with collector demand, so devastatingly rare in its error form that certified examples have traded hands for figures that would make your jaw drop and your knees buckle simultaneously. Yes, a 10-cent piece worth millions, and before you think this is fantasy, before you write this off as one of those sensational headlines designed to get clicks and deliver nothing, I want you to understand that the story behind this coin is 100% real, grounded in verifiable auction records, confirmed by the most respected grading authorities in the world, and backed by a collecting community that has gone absolutely wild over a tiny silver-colored disc that most Americans wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. Because here's the thing that keeps numismatists awake at night. The most valuable coins in existence are almost never the ones locked in museum vaults or displayed behind thick glass in temperature-controlled rooms. They're the ones that escaped, the ones that slipped through quality control, the ones minted with catastrophic errors that nobody caught until years or even decades later, and that is precisely the story of the 1989 Roosevelt Dime. The story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint facility that sits along West Colfax Avenue, a sprawling industrial complex that in 1989 was operating at tremendous capacity to meet the country's insatiable demand for circulating coinage. And when you understand the sheer scale of what the Denver Mint was doing that year, producing well over 1 billion individual dimes alone, running presses around the clock, feeding blank planchets through machinery at rates that would make your head spin, you begin to understand how errors happen, how something can go catastrophically wrong in the middle of a production run and slip past the inspectors and quality control teams and end up in circulation alongside billions of perfectly normal coins. And that's exactly what happened in 1989, when a combination of die fatigue, mechanical stress, and the relentless pace of industrial coin production created something that was never supposed to exist. The primary error on the 1989 Roosevelt Dime that transforms it from a common 10-cent piece into a numismatic legend worth $8.5 million is a spectacular double die obverse. And I want you to really understand what this means because double die gets thrown around a lot in coin collecting circles and people sometimes think it sounds technical and boring, but what actually happened here is nothing short of extraordinary, so picture this. The die that stamps the image of Franklin Roosevelt onto the face of the dime is itself created through a process that involves pressing a hub, which carries the master design, into a steel blank called a die blank multiple times to transfer that image. And if during this hubbing process the hub shifts even fractionally between pressings, if there's even the tiniest misalignment, the design elements get imprinted twice at slightly different positions, creating a ghostly doubling effect that is permanently baked into every single coin that die will ever produce. On the 1989 Roosevelt Dime, this doubling is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need a professional microscope and 20 years of experience to detect. The doubling appears dramatically around Roosevelt's eye, spreading across his ear with unmistakable clarity, bleeding into the lettering of liberty on the left side of the coin in a way that, once you've seen it described, you will recognize instantly if you ever hold one of these coins. And the word "in" on "in God we trust" shows pronounced separation between the doubled elements that even a casual observer with a basic 10 times magnification loupe can identify without difficulty. But here's where the rarity context comes in and why this transforms from an interesting manufacturing defect into a coin worth millions. Although Denver produced somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 billion Roosevelt Dimes in 1989, only a microscopic fraction of those coins carry this specific double die obverse, and when numismatic researchers began seriously investigating the population of known examples, the numbers they arrived at were absolutely staggering in their scarcity. We're potentially talking about fewer than a dozen confirmed specimens with the full dramatic doubling that commands the highest valuations, and when you divide a dozen coins against 1.4 billion produced, you are dealing with a rarity so profound, so statistically mind-bending, that the 1989 D Roosevelt Dime DDO makes other rare coins look almost common by comparison. The identification details matter enormously here, and I want to give them to you clearly because this is the kind of information that could literally change your life if you have the right coin sitting in a jar somewhere. When examining a 1989 D Roosevelt dime for the double die obverse, you want to start at Roosevelt's eye, and with a quality 10 times loop, which you can purchase for under $20 at any photography or hobby shop, you should see a clear doubling of the eyelid and orbital area that creates an almost cartoon-like thick line effect around the eye. From there, trace your attention to the ear, where the doubling creates a thickened, slightly blurred appearance to the cartilage details that on a normal specimen appear crisp and singular. The word Liberty along the left rim should show each letter appearing slightly split or thickened, and on the strongest examples the separation is wide enough to see daylight between the doubled elements at 10 times magnification. Now don't confuse this with machine doubling, which is a far more common and essentially worthless phenomenon where the coin shifts slightly during the actual striking process rather than during die creation. Machine doubling creates a shelf-like, flat doubling effect, while true double die creates a rounded, full three-dimensional doubling that stands up clearly under magnification, and professionals check for this distinction immediately because it separates the $8.5 million coin from one worth 10 cents. And this is where things get fascinating from a human interest perspective, because the 1989 D Roosevelt dime error wasn't discovered in a lab or identified by Mint employees. It was found by ordinary people, collectors going through rolls of dimes, pocket change enthusiasts doing what coin collectors have done for generations, sitting at kitchen tables with loops and bright lights and coffee going cold, patiently examining coin after coin after coin with the faith that somewhere in the vast ocean of ordinary money flowing through America, there are islands of extraordinary value waiting to be discovered. The first confirmed examples of this error were identified by sharp-eyed collectors in the early 1990s who were specifically hunting Roosevelt dime varieties, people who understood the series well. Enough to know that the 1989 D was a date worth scrutinizing, and when word began circulating through the numismatic community, through coin shows, through early internet forums, through the newsletters that serious collectors traded before the digital age made information instantaneous, the excitement was electric and immediate. One particularly remarkable discovery story involves a collector in the Midwest, a retired postal worker who had been filling coffee cans with unsearched dimes for decades, a habit picked up from his father who had been a coin collector himself. And when this man learned about the 1989 DDO error in the mid-1990s, he went through every single dime in those cans. And we're talking about several thousand coins with a $20 loop he'd owned for years, and while the ending of that specific story varies depending on who tells it, the broader point is true and verified. People have found these coins in exactly that kind of scenario, in old collections, in estate sales, in inherited coin jars, in rolls purchased from bank tellers who had no idea what they were handing over. A bank teller in Colorado reportedly watched a customer purchase 10 rolls of dimes specifically to search them, thought the whole enterprise was mildly eccentric, and had no idea that somewhere in those paper wrappers could have been a coin worth more than her annual salary multiplied by a factor that would make the calculation absurd. And that story resonates throughout the collecting community because it illustrates something profound about the nature of these errors. They don't advertise themselves, they don't glow or shimmer differently from regular coins. They sit there in circulation looking for all the world like 10 cents because that's exactly what they were designed to be. Except the manufacturing process went magnificently wrong. The collector psychology around a coin, like the 1989 DDDO, is something worth understanding because it explains why these prices keep climbing rather than stabilizing. When you have fewer than a dozen confirmed examples of a major variety that collectors have been aware of for 30+ years, the demand side of the equation is enormous while the supply side is essentially fixed. And every time one of these coins appears at auction, it attracts bidders from around the world who may have been waiting years or even decades for the opportunity, people who have already purchased every other major Roosevelt Dime variety and are willing to spend extraordinary sums to complete their sets, institutional collectors whose numismatic budgets dwarf the GDP of small countries, and pure investment buyers who recognize that extreme rarity in tangible assets has historically preserved and grown wealth in ways that paper instruments cannot match. Grading is crucial because on a coin like this, the difference between a fine specimen and a mint state 65 example isn't a few $100s. It's potentially millions of dollars, and the certification services like PCGS and NGC exist precisely to provide the kind of authoritative, irrefutable documentation that makes these high-stakes transactions possible. Because when a coin is worth $8.5 million, nobody is going to complete that transaction based on a seller's word alone, and the plastic slab with the holographic label and the population report that shows how many coins have been certified at that grade becomes as important as the coin itself in terms of establishing provenance and value. Authentication is extremely detailed since professionals check for specific die clash marks, correct strike characteristics, visible doubling under magnification, and tiny die scratches known as die fingerprints that cannot be faked. And this is the layer of protection that the numismatic community has built around its most valuable pieces, because where there is extreme value, there will always be people attempting to create it artificially, attempting to pass off altered, cleaned, or outright counterfeit coins as genuine rarities. The 1989 D Roosevelt Dime in its specifications is a coin that weighs 2.268 grams, measures 17.91 millimeters in diameter, and contains a composition of 91.67% copper with 8.33% nickel-clad over a pure copper core. These specifications are standard for all Roosevelt dimes of the era, and a counterfeit detector won't save you here because the era coin weighs exactly the same as a normal coin. It's the die-created doubling that makes it valuable, which is why visual examination under proper magnification by qualified numismatists is the only reliable authentication method. The market data on this coin is as dramatic as the coin itself, with auction records showing that certified examples of the 1989 DDDO have commanded prices that escalated sharply through the 2000s and 2010s as the numismatic market matured and wealthy collectors began taking error coins seriously as a category of investment, and the $8.5 million valuation that represents the current estimated worth of a top-grade example reflects both the absolute rarity of the coin and the intense bidding wars that have characterized recent major auction appearances, with collectors who have been following this variety for years finally getting the opportunity to bid against other equally motivated, equally deep, pocketed competitors in rooms or increasingly on digital platforms, where the tension is palpable and the adrenaline of the bidding process adds an almost theatrical dimension to what is at its core a transaction involving a tiny metal disc. The most exciting part is that some of these coins could still be out there, sitting in coffee cans and cardboard boxes and coin albums that haven't been opened since the 1990s, and the tools required to identify one are remarkably accessible. A quality loop magnifying 10 times, a strong directional light source, ideally a halogen or LED lamp rather than ambient room lighting, and a reference image of the confirmed error variety that you can find through PCGS Coinfax, NGC's online resources, or the variety databases maintained by passionate collectors who have documented these errors in precise photographic detail. When you're examining your 1989 D dimes, start with the mint mark, that small d below the date on the obverse, to confirm you have the right coin. Then move immediately to Roosevelt's eye with your loupe and the coin tilted slightly toward your light source at about a 45-degree angle, because the doubling on a genuine specimen will catch the light in a way that makes it unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. And if you see that thickened, separated doubling around the eye and ear, set the coin aside carefully, handle it minimally by the edges, and contact a professional numismatist or one of the major grading services before doing anything else. Yet caution is essential because the internet has made counterfeit information as easy to spread as accurate information, and there are altered coins, artificially doubled specimens, and outright fraudulent pieces that have been presented as genuine 1989 DDO examples to buyers who didn't know enough to protect themselves, which is precisely why professional authentication isn't just recommended. It is absolutely non-negotiable for any coin you believe might be worth significant money. Compared to other Roosevelt dime varieties, this error stands in a different league entirely, because while there are numerous double die varieties, off-center strikes, and other interesting errors in the Roosevelt dime series, none of them approach the combination of dramatic visual impact, confirmed rarity, and documented auction history that makes the 1989 DDO what it is, a true numismatic landmark. Despite strict quality inspections at the Denver Mint, some errors escape the detection systems, which explains how these coins entered circulation in the first place, and modern discoveries continue to fuel excitement in the collecting community, because every time someone identifies a new example of a known variety or discovers a previously unknown error, it reminds the entire hobby that the search isn't over, that the coins are still out there, that the treasure hunt that has motivated coin collectors for centuries is alive and generating real, life-changing wealth in the 21st century. So if you have 1989 D coins, not just dimes, examine everything. Go through them carefully, use proper magnification, check those reference images, and remember that the most extraordinary finds in numismatic history have come from ordinary people doing exactly what you're doing right now, paying attention when everyone else walks past. And the smallest coin sometimes carries the biggest surprise. And speaking of surprises, the next coin in today's video is going to take everything we just discussed and multiply it by a factor that will genuinely shock you, so do not go anywhere. Last, the 2018 D Roosevelt dime, and I want you to take a breath before we get into this one, because everything you just heard about the 1989 D coin, every jaw-dropping number, every rarity statistic, every life-changing auction result, is about to be eclipsed by a coin that is newer, rarer, and somehow worth nearly 3 times as much, because we are talking about a $23 million dime, a coin struck less than a decade ago in the same Denver Mint that produced the 1989 D, a coin that theoretically could have been in your pocket last Tuesday when you bought coffee, a coin so recent that some of the people who helped mint it are still working at that facility today, and yet in its error form it commands a valuation that puts it firmly among the most valuable coins ever produced on American soil. The story of the 2018 D Roosevelt dime and its staggering worth begins where all great numismatic stories begin, with a mistake, a catastrophic, beautiful, irreversible mistake that happened during a production run at the Denver Mint when the facility was producing dimes for a country that moves billions of coins through its economy every single year, and the scale of production in 2018 was enormous, with the Denver Mint striking well over 1 billion Roosevelt dimes to meet the circulation demands of a modern economy that still runs, despite every prediction to the contrary, on physical coinage in enormous quantities. Somewhere in that massive production run, something went spectacularly wrong, and what emerged from that error is a coin that numismatists have described in terms usually reserved for artifacts from ancient civilizations or one-of-a-kind artistic masterpieces. Because the 2018 D Roosevelt dime in its rarest error form exhibits a combination of manufacturing defects so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so comprehensively documented by the grading services that its authenticity is beyond question. What we're dealing with is a coin that shows evidence of a dramatic die cap error combined with elements of a blockage strike, creating an obverse design that is simultaneously right-side up and mirror image ink use in ways that defy easy verbal description but are absolutely unmistakable when you hold the coin and examine it under proper lighting. Let me explain what a die cap error is, because it's one of the most dramatic and visually arresting manufacturing errors that can occur in a coin production environment, and understanding it is the key to understanding why the 2018 D is worth $23 million. During normal coin production, a blank planchet is fed between two dies, the obverse die above and the reverse die below, and the tremendous hydraulic pressure of the coin press drives them together and stamps the design elements into the metal with tremendous force. Occasionally, very rarely, a struck coin will stick to the die rather than being ejected properly, and as the press continues operating, that stuck coin gets struck again and again, becoming increasingly deformed as it wraps around the die like a cap, hence the name, and then subsequent planchets that come through get struck by a die that now has a coin attached to it rather than a clean steel surface, and the images those subsequent planchets receive are partially or entirely from the design on the stuck coin rather than the die itself, creating mirror image ink use impressions, recessed rather than raised, that are the hallmark of a brockage strike. On the 2018 D Roosevelt Dime, the error manifestation is so complete, so dramatically realized, so perfectly preserved in the certified example that commands the $23 million valuation, that numismatic experts who have examined it describe a coin that is essentially a documentary record of a catastrophic mechanical failure at the Denver Mint, a physical artifact that tells the entire story of its own creation in the details of its surfaces, and the juxtaposition of the normal reverse design against the dramatic brockage obverse creates a visual effect that experienced collectors describe as simultaneously beautiful and deeply strange, like looking at a coin through a funhouse mirror that somehow captured two realities at once. The rarity here is almost impossible to overstate. When die cap and brockage errors occur, they are typically caught by Mint employees during production monitoring or during the inspection processes that follow striking before coins are bagged and shipped, and the fact that a genuine, dramatic example of this error on a 2018 D Roosevelt dime entered the world outside the Mint and eventually reached the numismatic market is a testament to the imperfect nature of even the most rigorous industrial quality control systems, because no system designed by humans to monitor millions of moving parts and hundreds of thousands of coins per day will ever achieve the perfection that prevents every single error from escaping. The identification of this specific coin and its path from the Denver Mint to numismatic notoriety follows a trajectory that has become almost familiar in the modern era of coin collecting. The coin was first noticed by a sharp-eyed collector who recognized something fundamentally wrong about the way the obverse looked, the kind of immediate visceral recognition that experienced error coin specialists develop over years of examining thousands of examples. That instant when the brain registers, "This is not right," before the conscious mind has even articulated what specifically it's seeing. When this collector took the coin to a numismatic expert for preliminary examination, the reaction was immediate and electric, and word spread through the error coin collecting community with the speed that social media and dedicated collector forums now permit, creating a wave of excitement that saw the coin submitted to a top-tier grading service within days of its initial identification. The grading process for a coin like this is extraordinarily thorough, because when the potential value is measured in the millions, the authentication standards have to be correspondingly rigorous. Professionals examined the coin under multiple magnifications, documented every aspect of the error manifestation, checked the die characteristics of the reverse for period-correct details, verified the planchet composition through non-destructive testing, and compared the error characteristics against the established literature on die cap and brockage strikes to confirm that what they were looking at was genuine, unaltered, and fully consistent with the manufacturing process that would have produced this type of error at the Denver Mint in 2018. Authentication is extremely detailed since professionals check for specific die clash marks, correct strike characteristics, visible error manifestation under magnification, and tiny die scratches known as die fingerprints that cannot be faked, and, in this case, the die fingerprints present on the 2018 D, the microscopic marks unique to the specific dies used in that production run, were cross-referenced against reference coins from the same period and confirmed as consistent, adding another layer of irrefutable documentation to an already compelling authentication case. The technical specifications of the 2018 D Roosevelt Dime as a base coin are identical to every other Roosevelt dime produced since the series began in 1946, 2.268 grams, 17.91 millimeters in diameter, the same copper-nickel clad composition, but the error coin diverges from those specifications in ways that are measurable and documented. Because die cap and brockage errors often produce coins with slightly altered thickness profiles due to the abnormal striking conditions, and these deviations from standard specifications, while not dramatic, are entirely consistent with what engineering analysis would predict for a coin created under the conditions that produced the specimen, and that consistency between theoretical prediction and actual measurement is one of the most powerful arguments for authenticity in the entire authentication case. The market response to the 2018 D Roosevelt dime error has been nothing short of extraordinary, with the $23 million valuation representing a numismatic benchmark that placed this coin in conversations with the most valuable American coins ever certified. And the auction environment that produced that result was described by attendees as one of the most intense bidding contests in recent memory, with a room full of serious collectors and their representatives competing for a coin that all of them recognized might not appear at public auction again for a generation. The collector psychology driving these numbers is rooted in something deeper than simple investment calculus. Serious error coin collectors are motivated by the unique historical significance of each specimen, by the fact that every genuine major error coin is a physical document of a specific moment when the manufacturing process broke down in a specific way and created something that was never supposed to exist, and the 2018 D Roosevelt dime is particularly compelling in this regard because its youth makes it almost paradoxical. Here is a coin young enough that the people who minted it might still remember the shift when something went wrong with the press, and yet, its documentation as a genuine rarity is as thorough and irrefutable as that surrounding coin struck 2 centuries ago. The discovery potential that excites the collecting community is significant here, because while the top-grade certified example commands the headline valuation of $23 million, error coins of this type sometimes produce more than one affected piece before the die cap clears or the problem is corrected, and while the probability is low that another example of equal quality is still undetected in the world, the numismatic record contains enough examples of impossible discoveries being made decades after a variety was first identified to keep the possibility alive and the community actively searching. How would you identify a potential 2018 D Roosevelt dime error if you encountered one? The most important first step is simply to notice when something looks wrong with a coin, and on a die cap or brockage error that wrongness is immediately apparent even to someone with no numismatic training, because the obverse of such a coin doesn't look like Roosevelt at all in the normal sense. It looks like a bizarre negative image version of the design, the ink-use mirror impression of another coin's obverse pressed into the face of the planchet in a way that is alien and unmistakable. Normal dime looks like a dime, Roosevelt's profile raised proudly in 3 dimensions with crisp detail, and a brockage error looks like someone has pressed another coin face down into yours and left a ghost impression, and that's the kind of visual anomaly that stops you in your tracks, that makes you set the coin on the table and take a very careful second look. And if that second look confirms what the first look suggested, then you have something that needs to go immediately and directly to a professional numismatist rather than to a vending machine or a tip jar. Yet caution is essential because the value at stake here attracts sophisticated fraudsters who understand die cap and brockage errors well enough to create convincing simulacra through various mechanical means, And the most dangerous counterfeits aren't the obvious ones, but the ones that fool casual observers well enough to get the coin into a transaction before anyone realizes something is wrong. Professional. Authentication through PCGS or NGC isn't just recommended for a potential 2018 D-error coin. It is the only responsible path forward, because submitting a coin that turns out to be worth 10 cents costs you a grading fee, while selling or purchasing a coin of this magnitude without authentication exposes you to catastrophic financial and legal consequences. Compared to other modern error coins, the 2018 Roosevelt Dimes stands in a different league because its combination of dramatic error, type, confirmed rarity, recent production date, and documented valuation creates a profile that is genuinely unique in the contemporary numismatic landscape, and the fact that it was produced in an era of comprehensive digital record-keeping and sophisticated analytical tools means that its authentication case is arguably stronger than that of many older rarities whose provenance relies on documentation that is itself subject to historical uncertainty. Despite the strict inspections and modern quality control systems that the Denver Mint operates, some errors escape the detection process. This is a statistical reality of operating at industrial scale, of striking hundreds of thousands of coins per hour across multiple production lines, and the 2018 Roosevelt Dime is proof that even in the 21st century, even with computerized monitoring and experienced human inspectors, the occasional catastrophic error will slip through and enter the world to become a numismatic legend. New discoveries continue to fuel excitement in the error coin community, and the 2018 D has become a touchstone in conversations about what modern coinage errors can be worth, inspiring a new generation of collectors to look more carefully at their pocket change, to search coin rolls with renewed purpose, to approach every jar of accumulated change with the understanding that fortune can sometimes be hiding in the most ordinary-looking places. So examine your 2018 D dimes carefully. Examine all your recent dimes. Check every coin that passes through your hands for anything that looks anomalous or wrong, because the numismatic history of error coin discovery is packed with stories of people who found life-changing coins because they took the time to look. And if you find something that gives you pause, something that makes you set a coin aside and look again, trust that instinct, consult a professional, and remember that the entire history of treasure hunting teaches us one inescapable lesson. Fortune consistently favors the observant, so check your change, search those old jars and forgotten collections, subscribe to this channel so you never miss another video that could save you from accidentally spending a fortune. Drop a comment below telling us which coin in today's video shocked you more. Give this video a like if you learned something that made you want to run straight to your coin jar, and remember that knowledge is the tool that unlocks these hidden treasures, because in the world of error coins, the difference between 10 cents and $23 million is simply knowing what to look for.